Hi there, I'm Chris from GetYourRockOut website. I'm conducting an interview with Combichrist on the 27th of June, just prior to the show at Manchester Live. So welcome back to Manchester, how are you?
Good.
Okay, it's been about a year since your last headline show at the Manchester Academy, so what have you been up to since then?
Pretty much exactly the same as the last time. I mean, just been touring and more touring and just, staying out there and doing what we do the best, and that's just, rock out, I guess.
Well, for many of us in the UK, our first exposure to the band was during your support slot with Rammstein. How did that tour go for you? Do you think you picked up a lot of new fans on that tour?
Yeah, for sure. But I think the most important thing about that tour for us was the person on a venue and club kind of scale, and then you suddenly go to an arena tour, and it was such an amazing experience for us as a band, and it definitely made us grow. Like we grew on that entire tour, like as personally and as a band, and we had the possibility to play for a completely new audience, a big audience, without compromising anything with the band. We didn't have to change anything. We could just go up and play the way we usually do, with the music we usually do, and we didn't have to think about what kind of music should we play or anything. We were just Combichrist on stage in front of a completely new audience, it's very few bands had the possibility to do that, because most of the time, if you want to get into a new scene of music or a new fan base, people tend to change their style or the image of the music to fit that fan base, and we never had to do that. That was the most amazing thing about it. I think we just could go out there and grow as a band and for a completely new fan base.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. I mean, obviously many people are first exposed to this kind of music through the industrial clubs and the underground scene. So obviously this must have been a totally different experience for you to go out there and play in large arenas to 10,000 people every night.
Yeah, I think the smallest one was probably 10. I think the biggest one was like 30, which and most of the shows were like around 20,000 people. It was just completely insane. And you put things in perspective. Actually, one of the Rammstein backliners put things in perspective when he said the first show we were doing, and well, he was like, "Are you nervous?" Like it's 25,000 people or something. And I was like, "No, not really. I don't. I'd rather play for 25,000 than 25 people. So I would be more nervous in front of 25 people because it gets so, like, just this, you can see everybody." And he said, "Well, it's a little different if 25,000 throws bottle than if 25 does."
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I guess you're right. So it put things in perspective a little bit, and you start thinking about it, you realize how much more people that is. Not that we played for 25 before that, but it was such a big step for us, and it was great. I mean, I have no aspiration or any dreams of ever. We never wanted to be. This band, when I started it, it's not. I never was seeking for fame, just to be successful with what we were doing. So I never did anything intentionally for the fame. We only tried to be successful with what we were doing. So obviously, like I said, that was the key thing. We could continue doing exactly what we wanted to do, but suddenly we had this big crowd in front of us to do it. And it was great. So.
But does it give you a sense of self-satisfaction knowing that you did sort of break through to a much wider and bigger audience without compromising in any way, shape or form?
Definitely. I mean, that's exactly it. So no compromising. That's exactly why it's so satisfying. It's like if you would have compromised, you would have felt like you sold a part of yourself to do it, and I never did. And that's what's really the good feeling about it.
Yeah. I mean, looking at the bigger picture as well, I believe you've got a spot on the Sonosphere bill in Spain. Obviously, you're going to be playing with a decidedly more rock and metal lineup. Are you confident of crossing over even further into their fan bases?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not I'm not worried about it. I mean, we headlined a hardcore festival last year, which was really weird, but it worked awesome. You know, we played with Arrogant Theris and those kind of, and H2O and stuff. And there happens to be people we already know from the past, from touring and stuff. I mean, we all come from the metal and the hardcore and the punk rock background. It's like we're all from those scenes. So for some reason, I think that translates in our live show, even though it's like we do have electronic stuff in there. And so, but when we play live, I think it comes through that we have that punk rock attitude, that metal attitude, that hardcore attitude, like that in our show, that energy. And I think that's what set us apart from most of the bands in the industrial scene in the beginning too, because we were from our background was so different from most of the bands in that scene.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to point out that you're going to be playing alongside artists like Marilyn Manson and Faith No More, bands who were really diversified in their fan base, so it's probably not too much of a stretch to imagine that you could appeal to their fan bases.
It's funny, because I mean, like, the last time I saw Faith No More I was 17, and it's 20 years ago. It blows my mind. That's the last time I saw Faith No More, and now we're playing with them. And you know, we had obviously everybody in Manson has been like friends of us over the years and stuff like this. It's a little bit on a different level, but and like Meshuggah, we did shows with Meshuggah back in '95, '96, my old metal band. So it's like it all kind of wraps up and comes back together again. It's so it feels. It's cool to do it because it's like it's a completely different thing than what we're used to now. But I mean, it just comes back to where we kind of started in one way, which is I don't know what to say. It's kind of like a
back to the roots affair.
Back to the roots, yeah.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I mean, you've pretty much toured relentlessly since the last record. Is playing live, in your opinion, the only way to really reach a wide audience? You know, with the changes that have taken place in the music industry in recent years.
It changed back to, you know, this is how I look at it, like, you know, most of the artists that I listen to myself is artists from, right now at least, it's just, I don't know, it's a lot of the artists from the 50s and the early 60s and stuff like this, a lot of rockabilly stuff and grassroots stuff and blues and stuff like this, and, you know, they did not even like Johnny Cash, you know, they did not capitalize on record sales in the early days. They were constantly on the road to get a fan base, to make a living, they constantly toured. There was like the top 20 artists were the ones that made all the money, but it was written by somebody else than the artist, and it was the record labels who would make the money. And it's exactly the same thing as happening right now, because back then nobody really bought records. They were listening to it on the radio. Nobody buys records anymore. They're listening to it on the internet. So it basically went back to where it was. So I'm looking at a lot of these artists, and I identify myself to a lot of these artists. If you want to make it as an artist, you just have to work hard. You just have to continue. There's no shortcuts, you know, anymore. Like, it's not the 80s. It's not the beginning of the 90s. It's like where you could make an album and never tour and sell millions of albums. It doesn't happen anymore, and if it does, it's not the artist who wrote it. It was somebody else who wrote it for the artist, and made popular because it was decided so by the mainstream record labels, major record labels.
I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned it's almost like the things have come full circle in the sense that the industry is going back to that. But do you still think that the album as a concept is a viable one, or do you think it's merely a promotional tool for touring?
I think, well, for me, it's definitely important. I mean, that's, you know, apart from being on stage, the music is still the most important thing. So if you start looking at an album as a promotional item, you kind of take the importance out of music. It's kind of like saying, like, oh, this album was shitty, but the cover art was amazing. Let's go and see this band. You know, you don't want to mix these things up. Like, I wouldn't do it. Like, if the music is the most important thing, regardless. And I mean, some bands just never make it, even though they work hard, but they can still be amazing bands. But it's a lot to do with the culture and about everything, or the way people grow up now. I still buy vinyl, you know, like it's, and but there's kids growing up now. They don't barely know what it is, you know, or forget about cassettes. They have no idea what a cassette is. So but the importance is still is in the music, and it's kind of coming a full circle. But then now what? You know, what's going to happen now? It's going to come back in. It's going to find another media to distribute the music that they can't copy. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it went too far, because you're going to find a way to decode it to a digital piece anyway, like no matter what you come out with. And at this point, it's like maybe even more about the music.
Yeah. I mean, is there that argument as well that it has gone too far, in the sense that we've taken away the vehicle, which was the record labels, that existed, you know, to give bands like yourself a big push, and now you've got a situation where there's kind of like an anarchy, isn't it? I mean, everyone has the same playing field, and it's difficult to really stand above the crowd.
And there's so many levels of different things too. It's not only is it too easy to get a hold of music for free, but it's also too easy to make music and release it.
Right.
So you have every kid around who wants to make music has now the opportunity to sit down and just make an album and release it himself. I mean, when we started, man, you know, like, or not with Combichrist, but back in the days, like in punk rock bands and stuff, like we had to save up money to get in the studio and record an album, and it was hard, you know, and to distribute it, forget about it, you know. Yeah, you copied the cassettes yourself and sent it out to people you knew. And I mean, it seems so strange from how it is now, but I mean, it's not really that long ago, you know.
I think the changes were probably too fast for the industry to keep up. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Okay, but I mean, looking at your albums now, I mean, your lyrics have always been very uncompromising, and there's certainly an even brutal element to some of them. Where does the inspiration for it actually come from?
Oh, Norwegian. We burn churches and we sing about mean stuff. No, I mean, I'm honestly, it's a geek thing, really. Like, in one thing, it's like I'm just a huge horror movie fan, and like, you know, big fan of like sexploitation movies from the 70s and stuff. And it was like I just created this character, Combichrist, and it was, all the lyrics was really just like my kind of version of a movie, you know. It was never anything serious in it. It was just like kind of to the point where the more brutal it was, the more we were just laughing about it. I thought it was kind of ironic. So, but it's definitely just fictional, and these days you kind of get to the point where it's like I guess I put more of myself in it, so it's less of the brutal stuff, unless I'm really pissed. And but it's coming back and forth. It really feels whatever I feel like doing when I'm in the studio. I guess how much movies I've been watching that year or something. I don't know.
So what are the plans for the band after this current tour?
We'll see. It's the Evolution tour, so maybe fully involved up to this tour. I don't know, but it will definitely be more. Not sure when yet, because I don't want to do anything rushed. Because like we said earlier, it's not a promotional tour, so you want to get things done right, and I just want to make sure the next album is really an important piece and not just something we made so we can do another tour.
Excellent. Well, on that note, we'd like to take the opportunity to thank you very much for taking the time to do the interview. We look forward to the show, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.